What's happening? Thanks for joining me on this Thursday morning. It is much appreciated as always. Lots of Drake Maye conversations happening this week, and we will start there with the young quarterback. Lots of unnamed scouts and executives are telling us Drake Maye should sit. Dan Orlovsky comes out and says Drake Maye should sit. People have brought up the Jordan Love plan to sit Drake Maye, not just this upcoming season, but next year if you have to do that, if it makes sense. Drake Maye was on with Jones, Mago, and Arcan on WEEI earlier this week, and Andrew Callahan posted the following. Maye says starting week one is obviously the goal, but says he's focused on learning the playbook and his teammates first. For me, I just want to earn the respect of the guys and get to know them first. Gerard Mayo was on with the Greg Hill Show. He was asked on the show if he believes that Maye would benefit from learning on the job while starting right away. Here's the Boston Herald transcription of that. Quote, yeah. But I would also say that every individual is different. We'll see when he comes in. Right now, we don't know how much about him as far as just playing at this level. But once again, they're going to compete. Jacoby has played a lot of football in this league. Zappe has played football in this league, and Drake has not. So he has to come in and not only show us that he's capable of performing on the field, but also really taking a leadership role with the young guys and hopefully the rest of the team going forward. So when do you start Drake Maye? If you're the Patriots, when do you pull the trigger? When do you put the number three pick out there, live bullets, live action, starting quarterback New England Patriots? When do you do that? My answer might sound, I don't know, borderline sheepish. My answer might sound borderline sitting on the fence, but I couldn't care less. My answer is my answer. And my answer is you start Drake Maye when Drake Maye is ready to start. No specific timeline. I don't know why people are so fixated on giving an exact timeline for when Drake Maye is going to play football for this team that matters. I don't know why. I don't know why we've got to pick week 3, week 1, week 7. I've heard Halloween. If he's not out there by Halloween, it's a disaster. If he's not out there by Halloween, it's a mistake. He has to be out there by Halloween because that might tell us he's not ready for the NFL, maybe for the long term. Why do we always have to find this specific date? It just doesn't make much sense to me. Now, if you get into 2025 and the young man is not playing football for you, that's a time to be concerned because you can't compare him and Jordan Love. Jordan Love was in a different situation. Jordan Love could sit because they had Aaron Rodgers. So Love could sit for a couple of years if he had to, continue to develop, and then get out there. We all know the Patriots are not in that situation. Jacoby Brissett signed a 1-year contract for a reason. The Patriots knew they were going to bring in a young quarterback, and they want that quarterback ready by at least 2025. So if we get to 2025 and Maye's not out there throwing footballs, we've got problems. But as far as this year and trying to gauge a timeline, I don't feel the urgency. And I don't think we need a specific timeline. There's no reason to rush. This is not about 2024. How many of you believe that Drake Maye is going to make an impact enough for this football team this year to get them close to the playoffs? I don't expect that. I think most of us look at this team and say, hey, as long as they compete, they win more games than 4, it should be considered a winning season for them. In the big picture from 30,000 feet. We're not worried about 2024. Now, there are certain things you can learn, of course. As soon as Drake Maye is ready, you throw him out there. You see how he adapts to the league. You see how he performs. You see what he has to work on. You can see guys like Jalen Polk out there and Javon Baker and see how they adjust to the NFL. You watch your defense. Does Keon White make a jump? Does Christian Barmore continue that kind of production in the way that he played the last 2 months of last season? There are lots of things we can learn from this year by watching 2024. But it's not the end-all be-all. This is the first step. This is the first step towards what we hope is a successful rebuild of this program so it is a consistent competitor within the next 2 or 3 years. That is the goal. So there's no reason to rush Drake Maye onto the field. We don't need him out there in week 3. And if you rush him, you might make that pick that some would tell you was risky already at number 3. You might make it even more risky by throwing him out there too early. It backfires. He doesn't play well. And then who knows what we're doing. So there's no reason to rush. And when you look at this coaching staff, Alex Van Pelt will know when Drake Maye is ready. Ben McAdoo will know when Drake Maye is ready. They'll know. I don't think Van Pelt or McAdoo are going to rush him out onto the field. I would hope that this coaching staff, while remaining optimistic and believing that they are better this year than they were last year, and that they're going to win more football games this year than they did last year, while they're optimistic, I would also hope that they're realistic. And they know that 2024, as I just said, is that first step in the process. Because if this coaching staff is coaching for their livelihood in 2024, then I think we're in trouble. Everybody has to see the big picture here. Elliott Wolf has to see it. Mayo has to see it all the way down through the coaching staff. Yes, you try to win. Yes, you play hard. Yes, you learn things from this year and the film and how certain guys deal with certain things and challenges. But if we're all being realistic, this is about 2025 and beyond, which is why I wanted them to draft Maye in the first place at number 3, because he is somebody at 21 years old who can continue to get better. And if you look at that potential, that's what you're swinging at. You're not swinging at who he is right now. And this staff knows that. They absolutely know that. And that's why Gerard Mayo and Wolf in the press conference after drafting Maye wouldn't say he's going to start. Because why would they do that? Competition is what it's all about. Let the young man come in, go mano a mano against Jacoby Brissett, and if Bailey Zappi is still here, and let him win the job. If he wins the job, then he wins the job. But if he ain't ready, he ain't ready. No reason to rush him. However, I will say, if he's ready, then you play him. And some people are afraid of that. They're concerned about playing Maye if the team is not ready. At some point, if your quarterback is ready, if he shows you during camp, if he shows you during the preseason, in the early season practices, if he shows you that he is your best quarterback, then you play your best quarterback. Because as Herm Edwards once said, you play to win the game. That's what you do. And the players on this team, they will recognize real. Real recognizes real. The wide receivers will know which quarterback is the best quarterback in that room by week 1. The offensive line, the defense what they went through last year, they're going to want the best quarterback on the field week 1. And if that proves to be Maye, then that's a great thing. If we're talking about Drake Maye starting week 1 of 24, as long as he's starting that week 1 for the right reasons and not because you have a coaching staff or an ownership that is just itching to get the guy out there. If he's starting week 1 for the right reasons, then that is great news for the Patriots, because that means that Maye did not have as much to fix as we thought he had when he was drafted last week, a week ago tonight. The players will know that. If they say he gives us the best chance to win a football game, he's going to play, and he should play. Take a second of your time. Give us that thumbs up. Don't forget to like the podcast as you watch on YouTube. The more likes means more eyeballs. You know all about the algorithm at this point. Also, subscribe. We're just at about 3,200 subscriptions. The next goal that we're looking at is 3,500. We need your support, so like and subscribe to the pod. Rate and review on Spotify, Apple Pods, and you can always check out the Patreon page. $5 a month for exclusive content for all of you. Before I continue my thoughts on Drake Maye, we have a super chat from the NE Patriot kid. Let me pull that up. $5 super chat. It's not allowing me to pull it up. There we go. 5th time's the charm. I disagree with the idea that this team isn't ready for May. I believe the new offensive coaches will improve the line play and the receivers. I mean, again, you have to look at the full picture if you're the staff, and I don't know what to expect from this staff. I'm optimistic, but I don't know what to expect from them. This offensive line, in some spots, you could argue, is better. In some spots, might not be better. As much as we felt about Trent Brown not being prepared, not losing the weight, not being focused, Trent Brown is still a top 10 left tackle in this league when he's right, when he wants to be engaged, when he embraces the challenge. I don't know what Chuck Sikora or Caden Wallace is going to look like at left tackle. So I'm not ready to tell you that they're going to be just fine at left tackle. I don't know Cole Strange's situation. I don't know if he's going to be ready and healthy by week 1. It doesn't sound like there should be too much optimism about that. If Strange is not out there, I can't tell you how Robinson or Leverett are going to fit within this puzzle and play on the left side. The plan right now is Onwenu at right tackle. Does that work out swimmingly, or do they have some questions as they start camp? I mean, I think it's too early right now to say that this team is ready and they will improve at the line. There's still a lot of questions on the offensive line. As far as receivers, I agree with you. I don't think there's any way, even though we understand that there's not a true alpha wide receiver 1 in the room right now, and we would all love to see that guy, even though we understand that, I don't know how you can look at this wide receiver core and say they're not better than last year's. They are better. And I know there's a couple of unknowns. Jalen Polk and Javon Baker, I get it. By the way, is it Javon or Javon? I've heard it both ways. I've heard it mostly Javon, so I'm going to go with Javon for now. You've got Javon Baker and Jalen Polk. But I would look at Javon Baker and I'd say, I would hope to hell he's better than Devontae Parker. Even though Parker was a veteran, he'd been in the league, he'd done things, and Baker is a complete unknown because he hasn't played a snap of NFL football just yet. Talent-wise, Baker is better than Parker at this stage of Parker's career, at least as far as what we saw from Parker. I think the totality of the wide receiver room is better right now than it was last year. Not much doubt in my mind. But you do have to figure out that offensive line. But if we're just looking at it from a quarterback standpoint, best guy plays. Thank you for the super chat, New England Patriot Kid. Always appreciated. Jump in front of the line with your question and your comment by sending the super chat. You know, when you look at the O-line, there's questions, as we just mentioned. But I'm just, if you're looking at quarterback, to me, it's less to do with everybody else than just a quarterback, right? If you think, unless you think you have a titanic problem up front, unless you have, so many issues, you're scratching your head and you're saying, man, if we throw Drake Maye out there, he might be done by week 3 because it is an absolute dumpster fire up front, which I don't anticipate happening. But if you feel that way, then you might take a little more time to make sure that the O-line is solidified before you put the young man out there. But if he's ready, otherwise, unless you have that dumpster fire up front, if Maye is ready, Maye is ready. And by the way, even if you have a question mark, and I do think you can walk into this season with a question at left tackle, even if you have that question mark at left tackle, you drafted Maye because his ability to handle the adversity, right? What did Elliott Wolf say? One of the reasons why they loved Maye in this draft is because he was one of the only quarterbacks that stood in front of the media and answered those questions. So they believe he takes head-on the adversity. So if there are some questions about this team's ability to perform, you still would roll Maye out there if he is ready, unless you think the O-line is so bad that there's an impending injury and you're just waiting for a disaster to happen. If it's unsafe for him, then I wouldn't put him out there. But if you feel like it's safe and he is ready, then you play him. One of the reasons why you picked him is because you believe he can get through the tough mental challenges that he is absolutely going to face in the NFL. You believe in his maturity. You believe in his leadership. You believe in his ability to come back from taking tough hits and bad plays. We've seen it over and over and over and over again. Here's another thing I would say. Until Drake Maye is ready, right? If he's ready by week 1, he's ready by week 1. If he's ready by week 5, he's ready by week 5. If he's not ready this season, he's not ready this season. Do not succumb. Do not succumb to the record. You cannot make a decision on May when to play him based off of the team's record. You can't do it. Don't be pressured. If you start 1-5, don't feel pressured in putting May into that football game. If he's not ready, that's the worst thing you can do. You're throwing gasoline on the fire. Do not react to what's happening in this season. Again, not about 2024. It's about beyond. So if you get off to a slow start, a bad start, don't rush into it. I would rather play Bailey Zappi, frankly. If Jacoby Brissett is a disaster or he gets hurt, the season gets off to a bad start, I would rather look at Zappi or Rourke, whoever is left on this roster at quarterback behind Drake Maye. I would rather look at those guys if you feel like Maye's not ready. The worst thing you can do is rush him. So do not react. Do not react to what's happening early this season. If you're losing more than you thought you would, don't punch the panic button and throw Drake Maye in there. Don't treat him as the life raft to a lost season. Don't do it. Also, don't succumb to the fans. The fans, of course, are going to get a little bit impatient if this season starts off slow, if they're not playing well, if Jacoby Brissett is not playing well. There are going to be at least a pocket of fans that will start chanting for Drake Maye. They'll be calling the radio shows. They'll be watching me on YouTube and listening to these podcasts, and they will want Maye. They will want to push Maye out there. Give us Drake. Give us Drake. I mean, you can hear the chant at Gillette. Give us Drake. Do not succumb to the fans. You've got to do what's best for the player. You've got to do what's best for the football team. As I said yesterday, when you look at some of these things, you've got to be responsible for the franchise and the program. You can't fall into this habit of succumbing to fan pressure, media pressure, whatever. Let the fans chant for Drake Maye, but do not react to those chants by putting him in there if he's not ready. And I don't think this coaching staff will do that. Most importantly, don't succumb to the owners. Robert Kraft, Jonathan Kraft, ownership, they might get a little antsy if they get off to a slow start this year. And ownership might want to see the shiny new toy that you drafted at 3 overall. But you cannot succumb to the owners. Don't give in to the record. Don't give in to the fans. Don't give in to the owners. Don't give in to the media. Don't give in to any of that. The only question when we talk about Drake Maye, should he sit? The only question that everybody should be concerned with is whether or not Drake Maye is ready. That's the answer. It's not any of these outside factors. There's not an arbitrary timeline during this season where you should plop him in. And if he's not ready by that arbitrary timeline, it's not a disaster. I ask whether Mayo and the staff will have patience. It's always tough for a head coach. If the head coach is sitting there and you're losing games, it's always difficult to not pull that trigger. Will Mayo have the patience? I know right now, May 2nd, he can be sitting in the facility saying to himself, no rush, no big deal. We play Drake Maye when he is ready. But when the games start and you are replacing Bill Belichick, I mean, this is going to be one of the bigger storylines of the NFL season. How does Mayo replace Bill Belichick, the GOAT? And that pressure is going to be on Mayo week 1. And how he responds to that and how his team responds to him is going to be one of the bigger storylines. Out of all the teams that are not going to be contending for a championship, the Patriots are going to be one of the most interesting because you have the May situation to play out. You have the young receivers. But you've got Gerard Mayo replacing Belichick, and we know the national media is going to be all over that. If they get off to a 1-5 start, you can hear it already. You can see it already. Mayo's a failure. Shouldn't have gotten rid of Belichick. It was a mistake to get rid of Bill. We know it's going to happen if this team gets off to a slow start, and that's fine. Let them talk. Let them talk. But hopefully Mayo is realistic and he has the patience with these young players. Wolf and Mayo have said, we're going to play the young guys. And I believe that. I don't think we'll see a circumstance like last year when Pop Douglas fumbles and he's benched and he's putting mothballs for a few weeks. I don't think that's going to happen with this iteration of the Patriots. If a young guy makes a mistake, I think that young guy is going to be told to play through it. Because Wolf and Mayo and the rest of this staff, they want to see the mental toughness. How does the young player react to that? So Mayo has to stay the course. He's got to keep his patience. Even if they're sitting there and they're losing week in and week out, you've got to stay patient. You've got to think about the big picture, and you have to do right by Drake Maye. And the staff should have security. I mean, I would hope that ownership understands that this wasn't like a 1-year fix. If you thought this was a 1-year fix and you're going from a 4-win team to like a 10-win team this year, then I would say you're delusional. Take the rose-colored glasses off. Put them to the side. Look at this thing realistically. And hopefully ownership has given this staff the security that they need. There'll be changes, of course. I'm not saying you keep everybody just because we expect this season to be a tough one. But they should also be ensured that as long as they do their job well, they will have a job going into 2025. Their jobs should not be dependent on the win-loss record, not for this football team. So when do you play Drake Maye? When do you start Drake Maye? When Drake Maye is ready. That's when. And don't worry about the outside noise. All right, before we continue, want to remind you that the Nick Cattle Show is brought to you by Warzone Paintball and Airsoft. Warzone has 9 maps on 30-plus acres of land, multiple villages, hilltop forts. They've got paintball, they've got airsoft, they've got paintball and airsoft, something for every age group starting at 6+. All you got to do is show up with jeans, good shoes, and a long-sleeve shirt. Warzone will handle the rest, low-key, casual, 4.9 star rating online. You know the staff is good. If you like, maybe you love paintball or airsoft, or you want to try it for the first time, check out Warzone Paintball and Airsoft in North Kingston, Rhode Island. Give them a call at 401-228-6366, 401-228-6366. Tell them the Nick Cattle Show sent you. All right, I got to go to the dentist in about 40 minutes. So just a few more minutes here. It's going to be a shorter version of the pod. We'll cut it off at about a half hour. But before we say goodbye, we've got to talk about the Celtics. Now, before we talk about the Celtics and them wrapping up the series last night, we've got to talk about Mike Gorman. I grew up on Mike Gorman. Mike Gorman began his Celtics career when I began my life on this earth. And I grew up with Gorman. And it was his final call last night. And when I was growing up, I didn't always have the easiest childhood. And on Friday nights, Mike Gorman, he was my sanity. I remember this. Riverside, Rhode Island, where Jacoby Brissett was yesterday, by the way, meeting with the media. Kind of weird. But living in Riverside, Rhode Island, every Friday night, I would get my Friday night dinner from a local restaurant, get a cheeseburger and fries when I was younger. I would pop on the Celtics game. And Mike Gorman, he would provide me sanity for that night. And I watched thousands of games that Mike Gorman has called. And his understated style, his delivery, not trying to overcome the moment, allowing the moment on the floor to speak for itself, allowing the crowd into your living room. The perfect timing on the biggest calls. And we live in a world now when you watch games, it seems like every play-by-play guy is trying to outdo the next play-by-play guy. Every play-by-play woman is trying to outdo the next play-by-play woman. Everybody's trying to give you the pomp and circumstance. Everybody's trying to be over the top. I prefer Gorman style. That understated style, allowing the action to speak for itself. Not trying to be the star of the show, allowing the players to be the star of the show. Mike Gorman, for me, is the best to ever do it, and it will not be the same watching a Celtics game ever again without that guy on the call. Thank you, Mike Gorman. We appreciate everything you did for us as Celtics fans. You are a legend. Don't forget to like, don't forget to subscribe, don't forget to rate and review this podcast. That's how we grow the numbers. We build this community. YouTube subscribers, we're looking for 3,500. We're at about 3,200. We need your help. We need your support. And if you listen on Spotify and Apple Pods, you can always make your way over for a second to give us that thumbs up on YouTube. All right, now for the C's. Bye, Miami. Bye-bye. See you later. I can't stand the Miami Heat. I sat there last night watching that game, and I must have said at least a couple of dozen times, just please beat the crap out of this team and move on. They were on my last nerve, and I can't imagine how those Celtics players felt having to deal with Miami. They just drive me bananas. They're always extra. There's just something always extra. Caleb Martin early in the series, extra. That dude's always out of the control. He's always reckless, flying around. Like Aaron Nesmith. Remember Aaron Nesmith as a Celtic? He was a crash test dummy. He'd be flying around, his body flopping into people. Caleb Martin, reckless, borderline dirty, right? Play earlier in the series, I would say. That was dirty. Bam Adebayo, just a little bit extra when he's contesting the shot. Not only does he have to contest, but he has to step forward, just always a little bit extra. Sometimes intentional, sometimes not. But they always feel like they've got to do something more. Tyler Hero last night was embarrassing. I loved every single second of watching the Celtics pick that guy apart. They attacked him on defense. That was Tyler Hero's personal hell last night, trying to defend Jaylen Brown, Drew Holiday, Jason Tatum. I loved watching Hero get destroyed defensively over and over and over again. But again, we saw the extra, the Al Horford play. I tweeted this out at Nick C Radio if you want to follow me. Hero was frustrated. So he gives Horford a shot, right? And then when Horford goes up for a shot, he gives him kind of an elbow / like shove. There's just always something with that team. So bye-bye. Now, I am glad that the Celtics faced Miami in the first round. And I also tweeted this out before the series began. I believe it was on April 19th. I was happy the Celtics got Miami in the first round because the Celtics, they had to embrace that idea. And as I tweeted back on April 19th, playing the Miami Heat in the first round would allow the Celtics to be immediately engaged. They know they got to take those guys seriously. They know that Miami, as much as they are extra and they drive me up a wall, they will continue to fight. They will give you the effort. They will not make it easy on you. In having them in the first round with or without Jimmy Butler, I thought was the best case because that allowed the Celtics to be engaged from the first jump of the first game. And that's what we saw. Game 2, aberration. Decided not to defend 3. I don't know why. Decided to not contest threes, and that game was a mess. But games 1, 3, 4, and 5 dominated by the C's. And Jason Tatum admitted it last night. He agreed with my tweet before the series because last night Tatum said, I thought we were a little bit too relaxed against Atlanta last year in the first round. And he knew that they would have to take Miami seriously, and that was likely better for the team so they can mentally prepare for this postseason. I thought the Celtics showed poise, they showed composure, and I thought that, again, when they had their foot on the throat, for the most part, they kept that foot down on the throat. And that's what you want to see from the team. There's no questioning this basketball team's talent. They are certainly talented enough to win a championship. It's whether or not they embrace challenges, if they are engaged for all 48 minutes. Do they play hard on the defensive end for the vast majority of possessions? And you saw that engagement. You saw them embracing the challenge. You saw them fighting back against Miami. You saw the physicality not bother them as much as it might have last year and the year before. They met the challenge. They win Game 5 last night, 118-84. Absolutely blew the doors off of Miami. And the Celtics had that urgency, and they played with pace from the very first possession. And when the Celtics play with pace, when they play with urgency, when they mostly show attention to detail, they are very, very difficult to beat. Very difficult. And they had that urgency. They had that pace. They had that attention to detail defensively from the very beginning of that game. It's almost like the Celtics watched the Bruins the other night and said, we ain't coming out like that in front of our home crowd, Game 5, elimination game. We are not going to come out flat like the Bruins did. And they certainly did not come out flat. They came out with all sorts of intention to destroy Miami last night. And that's what they did. Derek White, unreal on both ends. Games 4 and 5, that dude was outrageously good. Continues to be fantastic for this team. Brad Stevens looks like a genius acquiring White a couple years ago. Tatum was focused. You want to talk about engaged? Tatum was engaged. You know Tatum is engaged when he has big rebound numbers. And last night he had 12 rebounds. He only had 9 shots. They didn't need him to try to take over. The 12 rebounds and his defense, if you're watching him defensively last night, it tells you that Tatum was fully into that game. He was not taking many possessions off whatsoever on either end of the floor. He finished as a plus 35 last night. Jaylen Brown shot 11 of 19, did not take a lot of threes. He played bully ball. He kept picking on Hero. It was delicious to watch. But Brown was really good from the floor. He did have 5 turnovers. So he has to be better taking care of the ball. He had 6 turnovers the other night. He had 5 turnovers last night. Enough of that. Take care of the basketball. And really the moment was the third quarter. At halftime, they were up by 22. And that's the moment. You're up by 22. You've got 24 minutes left to send those guys home. Are you going to start the third quarter like you actually care? We've seen the C's come out in the third quarter lackadaisical, taking big leads for granted. That's not what they did last night. They did not let up. They were up by 22. They go out there and they win the third quarter by 10 points. They outscore Miami 30-20. They defended for 95% of that third quarter. They were not going to give Miami any kind of life. And that is a big step in a positive direction for this team. They dominated the glass 56-29. And let's give some extra credit to Luke Kornet. Luke Kornet had Bam Adebayo shook. Bam's going to have nightmares of Kornet. He is going to have nightmares of that big man this entire summer. Kornet's length and physicality changed Bam Adebayo. When Horford was out there, Bam was confident. He was comfortable. As soon as Kornet went out there, the entire Miami team reacted to that. They were concerned. They did not want to attack the paint. Bam was very uncomfortable. So shout out to Kornet, who was ready when Porzingis had to leave this series with that calf strain. Kornet stepped right in, and he made a difference. He made a very positive impact on this series. And if he can give you, 10 to 15 minutes, you look at the next series, either Cleveland or Orlando, both of those teams are big. And Orlando's physical. So, they're going to need Kornet in the next series. And the way he played against Miami, that should make us all feel pretty optimistic that he's going to be capable of giving this team 10 minutes every night of good basketball. All right, don't forget to like and subscribe. Give us that thumbs up. Rate and review. The Patreon page is $5 a month. Patreon.com/Nick Cattle, CATTLES. Trying to hit 2,000. Nope, that was a long time ago. 3,000, thankfully. Trying to hit 3,500 subscribers to this channel. That is the goal. Give us that thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe. I'm going to the dentist. So everybody have the great rest of your day. Until tomorrow at 11 a.m., this has been the Nick Cattle Show.